Hello, welcome. It's a Resilient Rooster. I'm back with another Yu-Gi-Oh video, and today I'll be showcasing Altergeist, Post-Flame of Destruction. So Altergeist is a control deck. They have traps and monster which helps stun the opponent, and with the addition of Altergeist Multi-Faker, it helps speed the deck a lot. So what Multi-Faker does is it special summons another Altergeist, and the best one to do, or to special summon, is the Altergeist Siliquidus. So what Siliquidus is basically a compulsive evacuation device for any card, spell, trap, or monsters. And what you want to do, ideally, is to bounce your trap card to the hand and then bounce one of your opponent cards to the hand. So Altergeists have some cool trap cards. They have an Altergeist Materialization, which is basically like a Call of the Haunted, and actually equips to the monster. They have Altergeist Protocol, which helps negate monster effects. They have Personal Spoofing, which helps you search the cards that you need. You would like to bounce one of your Altergeist cards usually to search your Multi-Faker, and then your Multi-Faker will just be able to summon itself. And that's about it for their trap lineups. And for their monsters, they have Marionetta, which helps you set a trap. They have the Multi-Faker, which special summons from the deck. They have Siliquidus, which bounces a card. And last but not least, they have Altergeist Melusik, which helps you send a card to the grave if you inflict damage. And this card can also attack directly. So the objective of Altergeist is basically to search your Multi-Faker and have traps on your back row. That way, when you activate your traps, you can summon Multi-Faker, and that helps your deck speed up. Once Altergeist Fakers gets on the field, that's when Altergeist pops off and shines the greatest. So let's get started with the replays. In this first replay, I'm playing against Lightsworns. I didn't have a really good hand, but after I pulled Duality, I found the spoofing. And the first step in playing Altergeist is basically to get access to your Multi-Faker. So I basically use my Marionetta to search one of my cards so that I can use my Personal Spoofing, send it back, and just get a Multi-Faker. And at this point, this is where the soft lock is kind of created. I don't have the Link monster, so I can't negate spells and traps, but I do have the Ash for the grass. But now I basically can negate one monster effect and I can bounce one of my cards. That way I can send any card that is a problematic card back to the hand. And at this point, I basically have all the initiative. I basically search all the cards I needed and I just attack for damage. And then during main phase 2, I summon Hextia. And then I use my Materialization to basically spam the field since it's a Call of the Haunted. It doesn't have a continuous sign, but it does equip to the card. And when this card leaves the field, you basically destroy that card that it's equipped with. But at this point, I basically go off, and my opponent couldn't do much with the Lumina, and now I'm starting to spam the field. Now I have 5 monsters on the field during my opponent's end phase, and now I have enough for game. So I'll just attack. So this is basically how Altergeist is when you're able to get off Multi-Faker. In this next replay, I'm playing against Paleozoics, and I get to start first. I did open up the Personal Spoofing, which makes this hand a good hand. The 2 cards that you really want to see is Marionetta and Personal Spoofing. That way you have access to Multi-Faker. And at this point, they ashed me when I tried to activate my Personal Spoofing, but I negated it with Protocol. The downside of Personal Spoofing though is since it's not Altergeist card by name, the Protocol can't stop this from not being negated. So I basically had to play around all the cards that they had in the hand and on the field. But I was able to actually manage to take control of the board. So I'm a Marionetta and I set my Protocol so I can use it next turn. And now I just start dealing chip damage. It takes a while for Altergeist to win since they have low attack. I would say the strongest one is the Altergeist Marionetta, and it's the best level 4 since it sets a trap to the field. At this point, I go off. I got my Siliquidus, so my Siliquidus can bounce any problematic cards. And I'm not sure why I bounced the Rodentoad. That was a misplay on my part, since I could have just waited until they use Totally Awesome and then just bounce it. But at this point, since I didn't have any trap cards in the grave, I didn't want my Siliquidus to die. So I just bounced it back to my deck and just added my other cards. And now I basically have the lock to where I can bounce the Toad and they can't do much since the Toad can't negate my effects since Protocol's on the field. and they tried to activate the Totally Awesome, but I was able to negate it. I couldn't deal any damage this turn since my Siliquidus was in defense mode. But now they try to activate Swap Frog, and I got my Siliquidus back to the grave. And here I probably should have waited till the end phase to activate Altergeist Materialization. That way he wouldn't have access to Totally Awesome. But I don't think it mattered since my Siliquidus could just bounce the card back. So it's quite nice. The only card that I couldn't stop was its effect to return a water monster to the hand. But they didn't have much water. And now I basically set up, or I maintained my board presence. I added the cards I needed to my hand, and it's like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 2 cards. They tried to activate evenly matched, but I was able to negate some of the effects by just using my cards to get rid of it. So I MST'd my own back row. That way I can use the trap cards in the grave as effects too. Materialization can return a trap card, so I return my Protocol, I summon my Marionetta, and I get my Materialization back. And I just maintain my board again, and this is after I got evenly matched. So everything is going perfect so far. Maintain board presence, and I still have so much card in my hand. I have the Ash just in case any shenanigan happens. And now most of these things is game over at this point. I start spamming, and now when I have Meloseek, it's sort of like a game over thing, since I can deal damage and I can send a card to the grave. And so now I got 5 monsters on the board, and I start attacking. I deal some chip damage, I send a card, I send Dupe Frog, but I use my Protocol to negate it. And when Meloseek goes to the grave, I can add a card. So at this point, it's sort of hard for any deck to come back, since now I go main phase 2, I start linking. And now I have negate spell traps, I have a monster negator with Protocol, and I can bounce. So that's 3 things that I can do during my opponent's turn. And at this point, all they could do is just set a Dupe Frog. But since I have Meloseek, I could just summon it and just attack for a game. In this next duel, I'm dueling against Weather, and I opened up the personal spoofing again, which was very nice. One of the bad parts about personal spoofing is it's not an Altergeist card. Or it's not an Altergeist by name. So it's not searchable, and it requires you to have an Altergeist card in your hand or face up. And sometimes you have hands that don't, so it could be a dead card at times, and it's just too bad that it's not searchable. So at this point, I summon my Multifaker and I summon my Meloseek. I summoned my Meloseek this time because I felt that since they have no monster on the field, I could basically just use Meloseek to send cards from the field to the grave, and I really like that too, since it doesn't destroy. So at this point, I just set up my field for next turn. I made the Protocol, that way I can negate any monster effects. And the thing about Weather is they really rely on their snow weathery pattern, since it helps them search for all the cards in their deck. But by negating everything that they do, it helps them, or it stuns them to where they can't do much. So they try to attack me, and I just bounce that trap card back to the field, so that way it goes back to their hand, and since it's not on the field anymore, they can't return my Hexia to my deck. They try to use their Bengala again, but I negated it, and now it's there permanently, since there's no way to get it back to the field when it's on the banish pile, unless by its own effect. But since I already negated it, it can't come back anymore. They try to activate the Drowning Meteor Force, but it failed due to Hexia, and now I could just attack for almost game. It was close, 700. But when Altergeist feels like this, it's kind of hard for any deck to come back, since they can't use any monster effects or traps or spells. So they try to attack me, and when Siliquidus goes to the graveyard, you can add a trap card back. So basically all your Altergeist floats. The only one that doesn't float is Marionetta and some of the links. Actually, I think, yeah, the link also adds a card too, which is very nice. And at this point, I basically just attack for a game. I guess I do also being a little bit fancy, but at the end, I don't think this all matters. So I attack for a game, and there we go. In this next replay, I'm playing against Pendulum Magician, and again, I opened up spoofing, but I don't think this hand mattered as much since I had Multifaker in my hand already. But usually, it's kind of easy to get multi-figure to your hand since there's a lot of cards that add cards to the hand, like Power of Duality and your other monsters. So at this point, they tried to activate Ash, but since Protocol's on the field, it stops the negation effect. And at this point, I'm just gaining advantages. I set my Marionetta again, and I set my Materialization for next turn, and I just attack. And I link up so I don't lose the evenly match. And the thing about Pendulum Magician is they need 2 cards for their scales, and so that way they only have 3 cards in their hand. They try to summon all their monsters, but they quickly get striked. They were able to use Iris Magician, but I was able to Ash it. And then during the end phase, I basically activated my Materialization and I got my Meloseek to the field. And at this point, I also sort of messed up. I'm not sure why I spoofed my Meloseek, but I don't think it mattered in the end. Since they had no cards on the field, I could just attack for a game. I summoned my monster again and just basically had enough for a game. In this next duel, I'm dueling against Pendulum Magicians, and I get to start first, but this time I did not open up any Altergeist cards. And this is sort of like the downside of this deck, is sometimes you draw all the traps and you can't draw the monster to support the traps. And it slowed down the deck a lot. And then it's already slow to begin with, so at this point my opponent attempts to go off, but I had to strike to stall at least 1 turn. They set up their traps, but I was able to MST it, and at this point I opened up my monster again. I tried to spoofing and get it back, but this time they ashed, and it basically slowed me down a lot, put my play to a halt. They were able to Pendulum Summon, and they were able just to attack first. I guess they were feeding my back row, just in case I had something, which I did. I Ghost Ogre, and then I Infinite Transcience. So I got rid of it without its effect going off. So I stalled for 1 turn, but I top decked the Power of Duality, but it gets Ash. So I lose this duel. They basically were just able to go off, and at this point I probably should have just resigned. That's it for the replays. If you enjoyed it, please click the like button. If you want to follow me for daily videos, please click the subscribe button. Thank you for watching and have a great day.